Well, that's 2 straight wins for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's get into it with Nick Eatman. I am Adam Kaufman. Nick, of course, has covered the team for the last couple decades for Dallas's website. And Nick, 9-4, 3-game lead in the division now. This thing is all but sealed. Playoffs right around the corner. And you've got Washington again in a couple of weeks. Giants next after, of course, we know blowing them out last time around back in mid-October. Any guarantees from the coaching staff this week?
I doubt it. I doubt that they'll play that game again. You can't just keep doing it every time, because then it won't matter. Like the guys that sit next to me at the stadium, I mean, I predict a kickoff return for a touchdown almost every time. So, whenever it happens, it's not going to be like, oh, cool, you finally got one. So no, I don't think you can. You got to pick your spots there. I don't think McCarthy's going to, do that again. I mean, this will probably be a tougher game than people think. Just division game on the road. They've won 3. I mean, they've had 3 road games in a row. So, to win the first 2, it's probably going to be a challenge, I would think. But this defense keeps playing the way they played. I mean, it might be hard for anyone to beat them right now.
When it's been a couple months since the last head-to-head matchup, obviously injuries come into play, the COVID situation, everything else. Anything you can take from that last meeting going into this one?
Not really. I mean, even their coordinator, J.C. Garrett's no longer with them. And so I think Barkley played for like 5 minutes or something like that. And then he left. So they were very depleted on the offense. And I just think the way the defense has been here for the Cowboys, even the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's just different. You got Tank Lawrence, you got Gregory, you got Micah Parsons, of course. And just the way that they're kind of playing together, it's gonna be tough for anybody to really get a good read on how where they're coming from and all that. So I think you can throw that out the window, but still there's some, they're familiar with each other enough that I think it'll be a pretty close game.
You've mentioned the defense a couple times. Let's talk about that group, of course, against Washington, which, as we know, I mean, the football team is inferior this year, at least to what the Cowboys have done, but still 4 sacks, 4 takeaways, defensive touchdown. Is this just becoming a weekly expectation at this point?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, 4 turnovers is a lot, but I mean, the sacks, the pressure, I mean, they're really doing a nice job. Now, I mean, you're not going to face Taysom Hill and Taylor Heineke every week. This week against the Giants, you're probably going to face that type of quarterback. But when the playoffs come, you got some guys down the stretch that are going to be, better quarterbacks than that. But as it stands right now, I think the linchpin of it all is Micah Parsons, just what he can do, where he lines up. You have to notice where he is at all times. And I think it's created such a weapon for defense, and you really don't talk about weapons that much, but on defense, but he's been that and more.
The offense, as we know, has been kind of stagnant in recent weeks. You look at Dak Prescott, the quarterback, of course, he has struggled 3 out of his last 4 games. You've got 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. The completion percentage is down to just 64%. It's not great, obviously. What's the problem been?
Well, there's a lot of problems there. And I think it does start with Dak. It's with him. It's the offensive line. Him and the receivers have not been on the same page. I mean, I do think it all stems back from the offensive line just being so inconsistent, not providing that push that we're used to seeing. But make no mistake, Dak has been off. He has not been himself since he came back from the calf injury. And, he's had 1 game, I think, where they played really well against Atlanta, but that's not a very good barometer, I don't think. And he hasn't hit his targets as much. He seems like he's a little shaky with his decision to run, and then when he does run, it's not always pretty. I mean, it's just been off. And I wish I had a better answer for you. I think it's a little bit of everything. Not having a consistent running game doesn't help, but he signed the contract he signed to be the leader, to be the guy that would carry this team. And he really hasn't done that in these last 3 or 4 games. We thought he would be the best thing that they do. And that's not really been the case. It doesn't mean he can't turn it around. I think he can, and I think they will, but it's been just a little bit off.
As for that run game, Ezekiel Elliott, this is 5 straight games, Nick, that he hasn't even touched 50 yards, let alone
Right.
flirted with 100. Is it the injury that we've talked about in the past? Is it underperforming? Is it usage? I mean, what's the main thing here?
Well, I think it goes back to the offensive line. I just don't think that they are a team that's going to knock anyone off the ball. And if Dak isn't going to play better on his side and really make teams beat you, then they're not going to run the ball. They're going to keep stacking the line the way it is. And he's not healthy. Zeke isn't. He's been limping around. I thought he was healthy for about a quarter on Sunday, and then all of a sudden he couldn't. He just was limping. I mean, he finished the game, but he's not himself right now. And I still credit that offensive line. I think they need to make a switch. I don't know if they will, but I do think they need to make a switch and go back to left guard Connor Williams. They were running the ball better with him. He had some penalties, but at this rate, I think you take some of those penalties just the way that they've been functioning on the offensive line.
The offense as a whole, this is still the second-ranked scoring offense in the entire NFL. We know the names. We rattle them off week after week. We know what kind of talent they have there, especially when they're healthy. But you can't help but look at what's happened or maybe not happened in the red zone. They're 1 for 6 last week against Washington. On the year, 24th ranked, 55% success rate, efficiency there in the red area, and only 33% on the road, which obviously wasn't helped by what happened last week in Washington. So what does that come down to ultimately? Because it's not like they've been missing personnel all season long. These guys I know have been a little injured, but for the most part, it's almost hard to juxtapose having a second-ranked scoring offense and a lower third red zone efficiency.
Well, can I say offensive line again? I mean, can I just keep throwing out that answer? Because that's what it is, especially in the red zone. And that's what it's been for the last 2 or 3 years. They can move the ball up and down with all these receivers. Play action helps because you have the threat of going deep. But when you get to the red zone, you got to be able to run the football. You got to be able to knock them back. And that's not what this offensive line does. So, that's been a problem. And I put the red zone issues mainly on the offensive line for not being able to run the ball consistently.
Just for giggles, Nick, let's get you out of here on this. Give me a fantasy stud against the Giants.
Let's go with Michael Gallup. I think, he's kind of been ready to kind of break out. He had a couple of nice plays in that game. One of them got called back. I could see him having a big game. Michael Gallup.